All right. So thank you everyone for joining us today. This is our first Whyte's Laundry Cleanup Committee meeting. I think I'm seeing a lot of familiar faces and names in the registrants. So I think a lot of you are probably pretty familiar with this site. But the goal today is to talk through a little bit about the Whyte's Laundromat site in downtown Lynn and the cleanup work that we've been able to begin thanks to an investment from the US EPA, who provided a $500,000 cleanup grant for us to be able to continue remediating the site. So we'll share a little bit of information about where we are today, what the plan is for moving forward, and we'll talk a little bit about our vision for this committee. I'm hoping to hear a little bit from all of you about what you would like to see in this space. But yeah, I'm envisioning something pretty casual, so don't hesitate to raise your hand or chime in if you have any questions or anything to add. So we can start with team introductions. I am Lauren Drago. I work at the City of Lynn in the planning office, and I am the project manager on the city side for this effort. I'll pass it off to you, Bill.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bill Bachnack. I'm the operations manager here at EDIC Lynn, and I'll hand it over to my colleague, Justin, in our office.
Hey everyone, my name is Justin De La Cruz. I'm the outreach manager for EDIC Lynn, and I will pass it over to Dan.
Hi there, my name's Dan Curran. I'm working with Verdantis. I'm the project manager on this cleanup. Verdantis is serving as the qualified environmental professional overseeing the US EPA grant for this cleanup work. And I'm joined, I'm not sure if she's in or not, but Tracy Costa, our brownfields leader as well, might be jumping into this meeting.
I am here. I am here.
Hi, Tracy.
Hi.
I had you trapped in the waiting room there for a minute. Sorry about that, Tracy. I'll keep
No
a closer
worries.
eye.
No worries.
And since we have a pretty small group today, I'm hoping folks wouldn't mind if I put you on the spot to introduce yourself so I get a sense for who's here and we all can get to know each other a little bit better. Irene, I'd love to start with you if you're willing.
Yes, thank you. So, hi, my name is Irene. I am the epidemiologist in the Public Health Division of Inspectional Services at City Hall. And I'm excited to be here and see where this project goes and how this space can be transformed.
Thank you. I'm just going to call on people. Calvin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm an activist in town, Calvin Anderson. I founded the Gateway Project for Lynn 22 years ago, and out of that effort built Gateway Park, which is now where the Gateway residences sit. I'm also emeritus Lynn Historical Commissioner for about 20 years.
Nice, thanks for joining us. Diane?
Hi folks, I'm Diane Cusha-Hills. I'm the executive director at My Brother's Table right across the street from the Whyte's Laundry site.
Thanks for joining us. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Wheeler. I am also in the building across the street with My Brother's Table. I work for Health Innovations and I'm also a city resident.
Thanks for joining us. Jeff?
Hi, good afternoon. Jeff Whedon from the Lynn Housing Authority. I'm the manager of planning and development.
And you have helped worked with the city on previous brownfields efforts to actually build housing once the site is cleaned up. So we're particularly happy to have your expertise here.
We have, yes.
Wig?
Yes, hi, I'm Wig Zamor. I'm connected as a consultant with Athanas parking lot that's just downslope from the Whyte site. In an alternate life in Somerville, I'm kind of a grassroots community activist on land use, transit, and environmental health. And because of I-93, we actually started a series of research projects about 15 years ago, and our first 5 doctorates have about 200 pages, 200 papers in the National Library of Medicine on transportation pollution and cardiovascular health.
Thanks, Wig. Gordy, can I put you on the spot next?
Sure, Gordy Hall. We own and operate real estate in the city, and sitting not across the street, but sort of around the corner, more or less, from the site. So I'm down here every day.
Thank you. And Tom?
Hi, everybody. Tom Arsenal, Congressman Moulton's office. Not a resident of the city, although I do wish to be one in the future, and just a concerned observer, obviously, of how this all unfolds. And obviously, Brownsfield is a federal program, and so just want to be a part of the committee to understand the direction it goes in and to just be as helpful as I can.
Thanks so much, Tom. And Christine, will you finish us off and introduce yourself and your role with the project?
Yeah, hi. So I'm Chris Lombard. I'm the Brownfields project officer for this grant, and I'll be your partner throughout the project period of this cleanup grant. And I'm also the assessment lead at EPA, and I know the city also has an assessment grant, so I'll be working with the city on that grant as well. And I've been with the program for a very long time, so I feel like if anybody has any questions or needs help in brownfields, to please reach out to me.
Chris has been an amazing asset for our team. We're very lucky to have her as our project officer. All right, so to start, I think a lot of you people have seen this before, so I'll go pretty quickly through this, but the site that we're talking about is the Whyte Laundromat site at 83 Willow Street. It was a dry cleaner and laundry from the 1930s to the 1990s. The building was demolished in 2000, and we know that there are releases of chlorinated solvents and petroleum that have occurred historically on this site. The city acquired the property as a tax taking in 2016. And we have already done a lot of work on this site, which is why many of you are already familiar with it. So there has been planning efforts as well as previous investigations and cleanup activities. So historically, we've done investigations, we've done sampling of the soil and groundwater, conducted geophysical surveys, soil gas surveys, and there have been remedial injection pilot tests, underground storage tank removal, performance monitoring of our remedial efforts. And so it's really been ongoing work, as you see, since 1978, trying to clean up this site and hopefully turn it into something that is more of an asset to our community than it is today. So this next grant from the US EPA represents the next phase of work that we'll be able to conduct to move the site forward and hopefully reach that ultimate goal of turning it into an asset for the community. Dan, I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about where we are today.
Absolutely. So broadly, results of historic assessment and cleanup activities document that chlorinated VOCs, essentially dry cleaning, former dry cleaning chemicals, impacts are migrating off-site and pose a threat to indoor air of future occupied buildings. To help address these impacts, the city received a US EPA cleanup grant to conduct further remediation activities. This grant is going to be valid through September 2027. So we kind of have a long time frame to work with all of this, which is great. In accordance with the EPA requirements, we've completed all our alternatives for brownfields cleanups analysis, which helped us select the remedial strategy to further clean up the site. Our objective is to reduce contaminant source concentrations to mitigate impacts on and surrounding the site and foster redevelopment activities once complete. The US EPA is providing additional support to the project beyond the cleanup grant and is performing extensive baseline and post-remedial groundwater monitoring for the project. So here's a broad overview of the next steps, which we're just beginning at the site as part of this cleanup activities, including site preparation and security measures, baseline groundwater monitoring, public bidding for the cleanup contractor, cleanup and post-remedial groundwater monitoring, and finally the fun part, reuse planning for the property. We will continue to perform public outreach and community engagement throughout the cleanup process. Now let's discuss a few of these key steps in further detail. We'll be taking steps to secure the site and prepare the site for cleanup activities. The Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection is actually helping us in providing assistance with some of these tasks, including funding vegetation clearing, waste removal, and installation of a permanent fence around the site. We anticipate these steps will be ongoing through the end of the year, pending that final timeline of Mass DEP. Additionally, we've been engaging with budding property owners to discuss the cleanup process and the possibility of partnering with them during the cleanup activities. As we mentioned, the EPA will be providing additional assistance through the Targeted Brownfields Assessment Program. In this, EPA's contractor will support the team by installing new groundwater monitoring wells beyond the site property and performing the baseline, that's pre-remediation, and post-remediation sampling over the next 3 years. You can kind of see a timeline of this. That's all roughly subject to change, but this is our general estimate of when we expect these events to occur. The data that EPA will collect during this will be used to evaluate the existing contaminant impacts and then measure the effectiveness of cleanup activities once we begin. So this figure, it's a little small, but as shown, historic assessment activities have included the installation of many groundwater monitoring wells at the site and in off-site properties, as well as along the public right-of-ways in the vicinity of what's called the MCP disposal site boundary. The approximate extent of chlorinated VOC impacts in groundwater is shown at the purple boundary of this box. So this is extending off-site to the southeast towards Oxford Street and Central Avenue. The additional wells installed by EPA will help us further refine this model and confirm the extent of the groundwater plume. We anticipate conducting cleanup activities over several phases, including an initial ejection event in the summer of 2025 and a second event in the summer of 2026. The proposed event in 2026 may either be performed on-site or, if allowed, at adjoining down gradient properties to help reduce impacts as a result of migration off the property. The final phase will be to install a permeable reactive barrier at the site, the timing of which will depend on the location of that second injection event. So as we said, we anticipate that would either be the summer of 2026 or potentially pushed to the spring of 2027, just before the grant closes. So to dive a little bit deeper into this cleanup activities, here are two cross-section diagrams that depict the remedial approach. The left graphic shows the active remedial approach. This is the injection event, where a remedial agent, in this case, it's going to be a compound called potassium permanganate, or sodium permanganate, where the remedial injection agent is injected directly into the subsurface under a carefully prescribed program, which will be monitored throughout the program. The remedial agent interacts with the impacted soil and groundwater to break down the chlorinated VOCs in place. Groundwater performance monitoring will be conducted after each injection event to judge the effectiveness of this cleanup activity. On the right side is the permeable reactive barrier, which is the passive remedial approach. This is going to involve the installation of essentially what we refer to as a wall of some compounds, specifically zero-valent iron and emulsified vegetable oil at the very down gradient end of the property. This will enable, over time, as groundwater flows through the permeable reactive barrier, to keep breaking down additional impacted contaminants in the groundwater. And in this way, the contaminant concentrations and the plume size are anticipated to decrease for a number of years after we complete these cleanup activities. Health and safety measures are paramount for site workers and the community while we proceed with this cleanup. As we mentioned, the city is working with the Mass DEP to fund a fenced enclosure to secure the Whyte's property itself. All of our activities will be conducted under city permits, and proposed drilling and injection locations will be pre-cleared of subsurface utilities to make sure nothing's damaged during the cleanup activities. The chemical agents that are on site during the injection programs will be secured in locked containers in accordance with police and fire department notifications and procedures. And lastly, all site workers will be OSHA HAZWOPER certified.
So I think we can pause there. I appreciate all that context, Dan. Are there any questions about what we just kind of ticked through? Wig, I see you coming off mute.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a fine point of terminology. I think vinyl chloride's the only VOC. The others are heavier than water. You know, the tetra and trichloroethylene are heavier than water. So is that right?
As a chemical compound, these are all classified as chlorinated VOCs. Really, that comes down to more the chemical structure of them being chlorinated compounds.
Yeah, that's fine. But just in case anybody might be scared that all three of them are gases that they might inhale, I just thought that might be worth clarifying.
Wig. Any other questions or comments?
How long has this been the standard for cleaning up sites like this? This isn't the first dry cleaner to be cleaned up.
No, absolutely not. These are well-researched and well-documented successful solutions to this. This research, has been going on for, I would have to say, decades and decades, proving these methods are successful in cleanup. Some of the historic assessment activities that were conducted at the site in, I believe, 2020 and 2021 did include a baseline monitoring as well as a remedial pilot program to specifically look at these compounds and compared it against a wide range of different remedial applicants. And the sodium permanganate was determined to be the most successful given these localized site conditions. And then in 2021 was an initial injection event that was shown to be successful in reducing those contaminant concentrations in groundwater.
And how large is this permeable reactive barrier? And is it underground or like how does that work?
Yeah, so let me just flip back to this. I know it's a bit tough to see. We'll kind of have to do a little more analysis work, but essentially it's something we would dig down into the ground and then install it from the surface upwards, and then it would be covered again, just by some natural, soil and materials. We anticipate we would want to have it set to intercept the groundwater plume. So as we continue to get a little more data and confirm the groundwater flow direction, we'll have that positioned, somewhere along either the southerly or easterly corners of the property, just to maximize where the impacted groundwater is going to be flowing through that for the most benefit.
Well, I've been attending some of your workshops for years, and I brought a chemist friend of mine along, and he was all on board with the technique. I'm just going to let the experts, you got to have faith that the history of remediation is, going to be followed here as well. I'm interested now in going forward with reuse of this site, and that's why I want to weigh in a lot.
Absolutely. It looks like Wig, you had a question?
Well, I just want to make sure everybody's familiar with the Whyte's operation. It was a 4-story, industrial scale dry cleaner. They had a dominant market share of all the hospitals in Boston, including Longwood. This was not a local dry cleaner. But one other thing to mention is that after gas stations, this is the most frequent kind of leak in the United States because, there's dry cleaners historically in every neighborhood. So that part is pretty well known. It's not like it's a unique chemical plant.
Absolutely. And EPA is actually, I mean, have been cracking down on this for a long time, but actually just proposed some new legislations to further regulate these dry cleaning compounds, referred to as trichloroethylene and tetrachloroethylene, which are the primary impacts at this site. Because their research has shown the large Superfund sites that they're dealing with most, dry cleaners, are starting to represent a major majority of those. So everyone has a keen eye on these.
Just a quick question going back to the defined area where I think you said the wells would be placed. I think there are currently wells that have been placed over time that are outside of that boundary. Are you suggesting that you'd only go outside of that boundary if testing warranted after the placement of the first 50?
No, absolutely not. So, as you just commented, that there are wells outside of this purple boundary here. So those would have historic results that kind of show, the impact. Those wells haven't been impacted by this down gradient release. So we'll continue to use the data as the new wells are installed, just to help really refine this model and try to get the best sense possible, of the exact, width and length, essentially, of this plume as it's moving off the property.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question based on Wig's comment on the size of the old Whyte's property. As a reference point, is this larger than most you've seen or dealt with, or how does this rank or compare to other projects that of this size or of this nature?
Yeah, absolutely. No two projects are ever really the same. But just given the size of this, and as we can see, it does extend, off the site itself and down, at least a full city block. It's definitely a larger one.
And this is Dan's colleague Tracy. I'm the LSP on the project, but we've had sites similar. I've worked on numerous sites over the years with pretty large chlorinated solvent plumes, and it's again, like Dan mentioned, sites are different throughout various areas, but these are notorious, these dry cleaner sites, and but again, we're really fortunate to be working with the city and to really being able to really utilize this funding to really, for us, it's to really try to reduce the source area on site, so the contaminant source, and again, as Dan mentioned, with that permeable reactive barrier, or the PRB, that will really have sort of this staying power over a number of years. So, we're really confident that not only working with the city, but also with developers that decide to not only develop this site, but other sites within that plume area, to really educate them on really what they need to do as part of redevelopment, as including installation of vapor barriers or subside depressurization systems to address any indoor air impacts.
Wake?
Yeah, just a couple other small points. So the tetra and trichloroethylene are heavier than water, so they generally sink to the first impervious layer, and they're not really an inhalation issue in many locations because of that. But when the compound loses all but one chlorine, it turns into vinyl chloride, which is a gas. So that's the one that it could end up in the ambient air, and so that's kind of the above the surface issue for normal citizens and pedestrians or landowners or residents or workers. The other thing, you can see from this plume the general direction in which it heads. In Lynn, you could basically say it's headed toward Lynn Harbor, because that's kind of where the level of the natural water in this area is. So that's kind of why this plume is shaped that way.
So I don't know, for those of you who are near this site frequently, day in and day out, you might have noticed that there was a team on the site last week, starting some of the subsurface survey work, understanding where the utilities are. So the work has begun for this project. And as you saw in the timeline that Dan highlighted, it's going to continue over the course of several years. There'll be periods where there's a lot happening, and then there'll be times when there's not a lot happening. One of our next big tasks is, as he mentioned, if you want to go back to the site securing slide, Dan, I just thought I would hit on this. So we are going to be installing a fence. Securing the site is really important for us to make sure that the work can happen. And I know over the time I've heard from community members concern about folks spending time on this site and sometimes extensively. And so we're working with the health department and with the police department just to make sure that we give folks as much advance notice that this is going to be happening. If anyone has any more suggestions or guidance for us for how to make sure that we're able to do this adequately, I'm happy to hear any input on that specifically, but that's definitely one of the early parts that we want to focus on. And that includes, when we talk about waste removal, it's not just trash, it's more specialized for any more dicey things that might be there. We want to make sure we have the right team. We secure the site, we clean it up so that it's really easy for us to continue doing that work once we get going. So that'll be the first sort of phase of work that folks will see. Oh, and that should be happening in the next couple of months.
Lauren, what kind of fence are you talking about?
Dan, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, it's just gonna be kind of just a standard chain link fence. I can't recall the exact specs, 6 or 8 feet high.
And you all know about the little 4-legged inhabitants of that site?
What 4-legged inhabitants are you talking to? You mean rats?
Yeah.
Critters.
We affectionately have called that space Rat Lake for years.
I hadn't heard that yet. Oh.
Yeah. In the wintertime, you can see all their
Could I make a
burrows and
suggestion?
stuff.
Could I make a suggestion that usually never happens? This forbidding
Absolutely.
this forbidding fence will go up like so many construction sites, etc. Because of the people in the neighborhood, etc. I'm encouraging putting up what's kind of a nice sign, like coming soon, something wonderful, something like that, instead of just keep out, danger, stay away. But I'm always one for piquing people's interest for positiveness for the future. That's just the way I'm wired. And if I saw that, I would keep an eye on the site and make it kind of turf that I would help take care of.
That's a really cool idea. We are required through our grants to do some banners of like, this is who's helping fund this cleanup, but that's pretty prescribed of like, you're using the right logos and things like that. And maybe that could be an opportunity to engage folks, or, maybe there's like more of an artsy kind of thing. That's definitely something we could think about.
This is Tracy. I also wanted to mention that we'll be working with the city to apply for another state grant to backfill the site. So to really address that site restoration after the cleanup's completed.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yes.
Yeah, you could probably put like a QR code up too that links back to your site so that people who have questions can go to your site.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
It's an easy link these days. Wow, what's that all about? Oh, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's the perfect segue to talk about communications a little bit more, if you'll indulge me a couple more slides. So we do have a project webpage set up. I think many of you probably registered through this site, but that's where we're going to be posting, for instance, this recording, all the materials. So, we want to make sure that we're transparent for the folks that are really curious or have questions or concerns, that all this information is available. In addition, in preparation for both the beginning of the work on the site and this specific meeting, we emailed everybody that we kind of had in the list of being interested in this site over the years. We also did a snail mailing to all the property owners in the immediate vicinity. And then Justin De La Cruz, block walking extraordinaire, he and I went out with some bilingual flyers last week to hit the businesses and tenants where we could. So we hope that we have made sure that anybody who has questions kind of has our information. I don't expect everyone's going to want to participate in a bunch of meetings, but the goal is to at least be as transparent as possible and have that information at the ready when people have questions. But one question I had for this group is, have we missed anybody? Is there anyone that you feel like should really be at the table here that we should be prioritizing? Are there, I love the idea of the QR code on the banner. Are there other ways that we can be communicating what's going on the site to folks who might be interested?
Public health does a lot of tabling events, so if there was some type of flyer or one-page summary or something that can be distributed throughout City Hall, and then we can take kind of on the road with us, I think that would be good, just for community outreach.
Oh, that's great. I got them all printed and everything for you, Irene.
Oh, excellent, perfect.
Well, one thing I notice is, we all know when we talk about the Whyte's site, but a lot of new people in town don't. So I would just pique people's interest by saying, that lot next to the post office? Because most people can find the post office, or they've seen it if they don't use it. But I think that just to kind of localize it, it would reach out to people and say, what's this? It's not this remote thing. It's right here in our face downtown. So this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay. And then, of course, the other part of our communications is this committee. This is something that we had talked about in our grant application. And we can go to the last slide, Dan. So this committee, as we're kind of making it stays pretty casual, not trying to do something super formal here, but our goal is that for major stakeholders such as yourselves, that we're keeping you informed and that we have a little bit of a system in place so that we're, in the habit and the rhythm of coming back to this stakeholder group to get feedback and guidance throughout the project. We are hoping to kind of meet either like quarterly or twice a year or kind of as needed. So I'm not thinking this is going to be, every week or anything like that. The goal would be to come to you when we have something to discuss or an update to share. And previously mentioned, sometimes it'll be a lot of work, sometimes it'll be a little quieter. And this will be happening throughout our grant period, although if we're successful and there's more money to be spent for leveling the site later or moving it into the reuse that Calvin is dreaming up for us, we can continue to have these meetings as needed in the future. So that's kind of the vision here. I'm curious if there's anything that you all would like to get out of a brownfields committee for this particular site. Does that sound good? Wig?
Yeah, so this isn't actually for myself, but this plume may extend further than you think. I mean, the reason it's kind of circling where the school administration building was or office was is because there was a little bit of a local uproar over exposures in the building and whether they were dangerous years ago. But you may not know how far this goes. Now, I don't suggest that as a major exposure or medical concern, just kind of as an intellectual point of information that you might want to have at some time.
Noted. Okay. Any other comments about either the committee structure or what you'd like to hear from the project team about moving forward? Okay. Well, then, I think that's all the information that we had. I'm happy to keep the link open if people want to keep chatting. But essentially, if it's okay with all of you, I'm going to consider you all our Brownfield committee. I will send you email updates as future sessions are scheduled. Again, those are all available to the public. So if you feel like anyone should be coming, you're welcome to pass that along or let me know if we're missing anybody that would like to be in the loop. But otherwise, again, happy to sit in here if anyone has further questions or comments or just wants to chat about this site. Dan, Tracy, I'm also happy to hear if there's anything else you wanted to chime in with.
No, I think we hit all the major points that we had planned. We're looking forward to another successful cleanup and helping get this across the finish line.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everybody for taking the time out to join us today. Really appreciate it. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, Laura and Dan and Tracy.
Thank you.
All right, Dan, I'm going to close this out.